All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Night School. I am your Professor Dungeon Master, but not the Professor Dungeon Master, Derek Melinda, and I am joined by my good friend Bob.
And student.
That's right. So if this is your first time joining us, I encourage you to go ahead and take a look back at some of our prior episodes. The whole gist of this is Bob is, well, he's new to being a game master, and I am trying to share with him a lifetime of experience. And that is going to include everything from how to GM, how to build a campaign, but we are starting off with how to build that first adventure. And for me, there's no greater no greater simpler option and no greater quality option than a good old-fashioned dungeon. And just like something simple like pizza or a loaf of bread, there are good dungeons and there are bad dungeons. And so just because it's simple doesn't mean that there aren't ways that you can really improve them through some time-tested design principles and really thinking about it as an engaging play experience instead of just slapping a bunch of stuff together, which is what a lot of people do.
And it helps that I have you critiquing my dungeons.
Oh, right.
Because if not, they would have got the last dungeon, which I can talk about.
Yeah. So we'll get into that, and I'll put some timestamps below where Bob and I are going to kind of discuss what he has done to date, what he is working on, and then at the end of the episode, we will go into sort of the next week's, or I should say this week's lesson. Additionally, you should know that after every episode, Bob and I also talk a little bit more in depth about some of the content, some of the ideas that we were discussing. Maybe we go a little bit further. This is all bonus content, but it is available if you are a member of our Patreon and you are the Knight tier or higher. So if you are interested in bonus content from us, as well as being able to join our exclusive Discord and all the other options that, cool things that come with being a patron, take a look in the the doobly-doo below. There'll be a link to check out patreon.com/Knights of Last Call to get some of these bonus episodes along with a host of other options and cool things. All right, Bob. So we'll start off here, and I know you can. I'm sharing my screen so you can see it.
Yep.
But the task was to come up with an idea for a dungeon and to remind people quickly.
Yep.
Because I'm sure you people watching are loyal viewers, and you already know. What was sort of the general theme or idea that we came up for your dungeon?
So this was going to be a dwarven fortress somewhere in the mountains, sort of outside of town. And this is going to be some kind of trade post. This was going to be somewhere where they were doing some trade and sort of keeping this area kind of locked in and lay of the land. But something happened. We don't know what, I do, but ideally there was a betrayal at some point. Someone got in the back entrance because this was supposed to be a very fortified area, and it was taken over and everyone died and it's sort of been abandoned. Well, what happened, and we'll discover that. But there is 3 major parties involved here. There is the necromancer who is in this, and because of this ley line that exists here, and that is causing maybe the dwarfs, these greedy dwarfs that had passed away, to become undead. They're sort of in one camp. Then you have this sort of emerging goblin area that came in the front door, and they're sort of trying to hold this as a nice little area for themselves. And then third, you have the PCs who are trying to explore this thing for the treasures and riches that it may be here. That's sort of the overall 10,000 foot view of what it was. And then last session, or school class, I guess I should say.
Yes, last time
I submitted my assignment, and I got a C-. And
That's
one
right.
of the big complaints was symmetry, which I heard many people did pros and cons, and they also said there was different ways to do symmetry or implied symmetry without actually doing symmetry, which is tough for me being an architect.
Right.
And I can sort of go into a real quick story. We do Northern Reaches in the Patreon, which is basically a West Marches MMO mega campaign for a ton of our patrons to play in sort of a giant game with like 30 plus players and 10 plus GMs. I am a GM in there.
Yep.
I created a quick tomb that they were going to go to.
Correct.
Well, I went in the tomb with a couple of the patrons. I was the GM, and GM Scott, shout out to one of our patrons, started walking down the one aisle. They went down, blah, blah, for the crypt, came back up, and they said, I guarantee you I know what's on the other side of this crypt.
Yep.
And it's exactly the same. And I was like, yes, it is. I mean, that's sort of, I made this before this next homework assignment, but
Right.
he
And
was like,
by the way, one of
yeah.
the things that I had told you was that by making a symmetrical design, you sort of rob the players
Yep.
of the fun of discovery, because once they figure out half your dungeon or a quarter of your dungeon, they basically understand what the other quarter is, and
Yep.
it's not as fun to see these new areas.
I mean, they went down the hallway, let's say on the left-hand side. The
Yeah.
first go around, very stealthy, very careful, cautious. What's up ahead?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there were some skeletons. They killed them. What else is up ahead?
Sure.
Now the second time they went through the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Like, we're just gonna charge up with probably skeletons on the insert side, and we're gonna kill them and keep going. I was like, okay, yeah, I could see where that's an issue.
Right. So it basically exactly kind of worked out the way it came.
Yep. So 2.0, no symmetry.
Yeah. So let's take a look here. Pending a new grade here. I'll erase the C.
Also, one of the big things was you told me from last class was to start to think about XP.
Yes, XP,
and getting that. So for people looking at this, you'll see that I started to lay out some of the XP encounter stuff that I was thinking throughout this, and we'll discuss as we go through. So yeah, that's sort of the gist.
Great. That sounds great. So yeah, so I gave you an opportunity to sort of improve the design or the layout of the dungeon. And then the other thing that we talked about was how much XP do you want to put into your dungeon? And with, some of your goals in mind, such as, do I want this to be enough encounters for them to get halfway to the next level? Do I want them to gain 3 levels, right? If that's the case, and you're not just using simple milestone, you need to make sure that there's enough XP. We talked about 3 things. We talked about 1, you need to decide how much XP you need to put in, right? How much. 2 is we decided what percentage of XP do you expect, or should your players expect, to actually get, right?
Yes.
Because the idea of a dungeon is players have agency and they can go someplace and they don't have to go everywhere. And that means they might miss some XP. They might miss some treasure. And you don't want to force them to have to basically, explore everything in order to get enough level, right? If you need them to be level 2 and you put 1,000 XP into your dungeon, and
they got to get everything,
right?
Yep.
And so we talked about maybe, do you put in, and again, you don't have to, if your target is, I want them to gain 500 XP, then maybe you put in, 750, or you put in 800 or whatever. And then the last thing we talked about was what awards the XP.
Yep.
Okay. It doesn't just have to be combat. If you have a very combative group who really likes fights, well, then fill it up with combat. But there are other ways to award XP beyond combat. You can award XP for discoveries. You can award XP for lore. You can award XP for finding secret traps or treasures. You could award XP for overcoming social encounters. So these are all things that you can put into your game that will award XP that don't necessarily have to be for combat, which can also be a nice thing because combats tend to take a lot of time. And so that's also a great pacing mechanic. If you know that you want this dungeon to last 3 or 4 weeks worth of play, then fill it full of combat encounters. But if you think the party is going to get bored, well, then maybe you put a mix of combat encounters and non-combat encounters. So we've got a whole rigmarole here, Bob. So first things first, and I'm zoomed in here, but let me scroll over. We got 2 levels now.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll hop over to level 2 here in a second. And
sub basement 1.
Sub basement 1. That sounds great. So let's start off with and what I'll do here, I'll add this in post, but real quick, I'll just show a picture of the old dungeon layout. Okay. We'll put that up in the corner there.
Screeching face and C minus grade.
Right, exactly. Looming over everything.
Yes.
So let's talk about what are some of the changes that you made and what were you hoping to accomplish with them? And then as we sort of move through the dungeon, let's talk about what are your design goals with these things.
So one of the key things I wanted to do this time was no symmetry. Well, not no symmetry, but symmetry sort of is not the key, the key focus. 2 was to actually create a space that the necromancer would exist that did not, last time he existed in a room that he could never escape from, or he would just kill the goblin. So why is he there and where is he at and what is he doing that is not, why, how could the goblins survive in this area? Is there a contested area? Why are the undead not taken over, and why are the goblins there? So these are the kind of key focuses that I was looking at in this one.
Yeah, so let's real quick, and we're kind of jumping around here, but this is no, this is an opening thing. So open forum. So one of the first things I noticed here is you put your necromancer down here in the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And sorry about that. The Bob's map has
I have grid
line, so it looks kind of wonky. So you'll have to pardon that. But I noticed that you put the necromancer here in the bottom. Yes. And I like that because it gives that second level sort of a bigger deal, right? You know, you don't just walk in the door and walk, 10 feet and boom, there's the, we'll call him the boss of the dungeon, right? Instead, you got to have to kind of, you have to find him. And it makes the second level seem a little bit more important, a little bit scarier. So I like that.
And I try to play with different factors, and you would we'll get to it when we get to the second sub-basement one, but now it's sort of a cave,
right?
Cavern that was carved out. I wanted this different flavor that you would feel sort of entering a new zone.
Right. So. And another thing too, which is important is, we might've touched on this, but like doing something like a transitional area. Okay. Like you can see here, this transitional area. Mm-hmm. Okay. It gives the players an automatic clue. Okay. Something's up here. Yep. Even if we were kind of just going along without actually telling anybody anything, you sort of say, okay, the scenario has changed here. The music has changed. Okay. Like
Sirenscape insert.
Drama. New drama. It's a clue. It's a context clue that something is going to be different. It doesn't necessarily mean the boss is up ahead, but what it does mean is that if there's a group of players who have become a little bit more, let's just say that they have become a little bit more, used to the way your dungeons were working. This is an indication to them. Hey guys, maybe what's up ahead is a little bit dangerous. And again, and you don't have to and this is great is, I'm kind of really harping on this, but what's really great about this is if your players are going through this dungeon, they're going to see this moment. And let's say they're pretty beat up. Their hit points are low. Maybe their spells are down. They might go, let's not go in there yet.
Yep.
Because it's telling them there's something up here, and if they do go in and they do get their butt kicked, at least they'll go, okay, but I understand now. There was kind of this fair warning. I had an opportunity and I sort of ignored it. So
yeah, I really wanted to think a lot about what you talked about last time, which was player agency and I not having a direct path, multiple paths to a certain goal, and then maybe you would decide that area might be too strong. Maybe I should pull back, or
right, exactly.
Get my spells and rest or something.
Yeah, exactly. And and again, there's a lot to talk about here, so I'll let you talk.
I'm hoping for a B in this one.
So let's talk. Let's start here outside. So one of the first things
you sort of come into this mountainous terrain.
So one of the first things here I noticed is there's a pit trap.
Yeah. So disregard that. First thing you see is the entrance to the mountain fortress, this dwarven fortress with two towers on each side. Yep. Which would be to sort of arrow on someone. There's my symmetry. There's my dwarven fortress from the outside. Sure. This is what my look is. You would approach this entrance and they would let you in, but maybe you weren't here to be let in. And the idea is maybe there's a pit trap. The only thing I don't know what the pit trap is, why was it not activated by the goblins?
Okay. So let's stop right here. Cause I do want, now I'm curious because this is next level stuff here. What is this symbol here inside the tower?
It is. I wanted to drop a key.
Okay.
Or some kind of locking some kind of, we were talking about doom keys last time.
Okay.
And I like the idea that you have to gather these keys to unlock something later. And these guards, these former dwarven soldiers had these keys, these two different keys, and they were in two different sides of the building.
Gotcha.
And these keys you don't need to do for the necromancer. This is a separate thing that you could do.
Well, because one thing that I really
That's my symbol.
No. And let me ask here, where do you intend for these keys? What are these keys supposed to do here?
They are the two key locked door to get into the king's chamber.
Okay, so where's that?
You see right where your mouse is. Yep.
Gotcha.
Double locked door. It needs two keys to get in there. The red key and the blue key.
Okay.
But I'm just keeping it simple and
Yeah.
Kind of
So
goofy.
obviously, putting a key in there is not it's not a bad idea at all. But one thing that I really like about this design is when the players are coming in to this dungeon, they are going to see, right? Because you can, they kind of abut the fortress, right? They can see that there are these two towers, right?
Yep.
And the players could come in and they could go this way, and then they could discover this tower.
Yep.
But as they kind of make their way through the dungeon, they are going to determine that they cannot get to this tower.
Absolutely.
But they know it's there.
Got that carrot.
Right. And so this immediately, because one of the biggest problems that you need to avoid, and this is probably worth a whole thing in its own type, but you're already starting to learn this, is one of the biggest downfalls of dungeons is, really it's the biggest downfall of any adventure, is when players have no idea what to do, and we've gotten used to, adventure paths that kind of spoon feed us instructions about where to go and what to do. And, a common mistake when people build like a sandbox is they go, yep, there's a big dungeon, go in it. That's like a big mistake. The players, even before your first session, the players should know about the legend of the Dwarf King's treasure. That's why they're here, right? They need these goals in mind. Or maybe they've heard about tales of a necromancer that lives in the ancient fortress, right? Either way, you're giving them goals. There are things that they are actively looking for. And even if just this idea that there's this tower here, but they can't get to it, it sort of sets another goal. Hey, we saw two towers, maybe we should go and explore that. You could even, sort of up at another level. Imagine if in this tower, they found a pretty cool treasure. Okay. You used keys, but I'm going to use treasure as sort of a generic sense. And let's say this is a pretty good treasure plus. They go, hey, if this tower had a really good treasure, maybe the other tower has a really good treasure too. And maybe you put like a treasure plus over there because you go, yeah, hey, good job. You found this treasure. You found this tower. Right. And so that could be a really, really powerful tool. So, you went with this kind of key idea, which I think is fine, but I automatically already really like this design.
Ooh, okay? Yeah.
All right. Now there is something I don't like, which we'll get to in a second.
Trap?
It is the pit trap.
Ah.
Okay. Do you know why I don't like the pit trap?
Is it a gotcha?
Well, it's two things. It's actually three things. And one is it's a gotcha. Okay. Because more than not likely, your players are not going to have any reason to believe that this is here. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, this is more of a PF2 thing. These zombies are not going to be shooting down at the players.
Correct.
So someone's going to fall into the pit trap. They're going to climb out, and the group is going to spend the next 2 to 3 hours treating wounds outside the dungeon, and then they'll be healed to full. Third, it's a bad way to, the beginning of anything is a very delicate time. When you get into you've seen this yourself when we play, right? It could take us 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour to really get the session going, right?
Yeah.
This can be sort of a momentum bust, right? Like the players are all really excited and they're really good to go. And then now they fall down into a pit. Right. It doesn't give them that sense of like heroic excitement. It doesn't give them that sense of like, I don't know, I guess adventure that they might have expected. It's sort of more of a setback. Now, setbacks are fine, but you have designed this that the game session is going to start with a setback.
Yeah.
And that I think.
Couldn't you just make the trap discovery easier, the DC easier? So that the players are more likely to discover the trap?
Okay. Well, now we're going to get to the fourth problem. And this is, again, we're designing a dungeon for new people, and you're designing a dungeon. The fourth thing is, do you know what a pit trap does?
Oh, I was using pit trap in the generic sense, not.
No. Do you know what a trap does?
What do you mean? You mean like activation?
To your game.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
What does a trap do to your players, to your game?
It usually causes them harm.
Sure. But outside of that, how is that going to change their behavior?
They're going to go more cautiously.
They are going to become paranoid.
Got it.
Okay.
Sounds perfect for a ghost, a zombie dwarf fortress.
But it's not the kind of paranoid I think that you want.
I don't disagree with you.
Right. It's going to make them very cautious. And it's going to make them overly cautious. It's going to make them realize that, okay, when we out of nowhere could just fall into a pit. Okay. And the other thing is you're trying to give them a heads up about potentially this is sort of an indication. Hey, be on your care, be careful. There are traps ahead, but there are no other traps.
There's one, but it's not that big of a deal.
Right. So this is sort of like setting them up to be extra cautious, but then there's nothing to be extra cautious about. Now,
yeah, I get that. That makes sense in like the meta sense, like the way a player just does things. I was thinking of the other way. If I have the Goblin Fortress, right, I don't want traps inside. Okay, I want the traps.
You are thinking about the game from a full simulationist perspective. And again, there are definitely a lot of people, old school D&D, which should tell you that. Yeah, you're like, actually, you know what you should do? You should have the pit trap here, and then there's bells attached. And then when like 2 or 3 people fall in, the goblins rush out, and then they start murdering everybody as they try to climb up. Or while the party is split up and half of them are at the bottom of the pit trap, they murder the other people. And then they have pots of boiling oil or jars full of scorpions that they pour down into the pit trap on everybody who's struggling to climb up, which, by the way, the walls they've coated with grease.
Weren't you just telling me about it one where like you guys fell in a pit trap, then you climbed out and fell into a pit trap in the next 5-foot square?
Yeah.
And then fell into another pit trap in the next 5-foot square?
Yes, that is correct. There was a situation where there was a pit trap next to a pit trap that was next to a pit trap. And we said, how thin are these walls? And it was like monodimensional. And the excuse was, it's magic. So like fundamentally from like obviously from a, if I was these goblins, I understand that this is a weak point.
Yes.
Right. And I would like some sort of defensive awareness. So I don't have a problem with this pit trap making sense.
Okay.
What I have a problem with is what is the role that you are hoping this pit trap accomplishes?
I was thinking of it in a simulation.
Yeah.
I think that this pit trap would be to stop enemies from coming in undeterred. That they didn't invite into the fortress themselves. The people that know to trade know about the pit trap or are being guided around it, and people that don't would fall into the pit trap or, discover it. Was my idea.
Well, I mean, you should never presume what the party is or isn't going to do.
Well,
right?
They don't hit the pit trap. They can walk right around it. But if they do hit the pit trap, you could see on the sub-basement floor 1, they actually end up in this sort of area where it was where the guards would come through on their patrol. So if they fell in, the guard would come pick them up and put them in prison.
So what happens if only some people fall into the pit trap?
You get a rope and take them out.
Again, fundamentally, it's not a problem. The other issue is, what's our scale here? 10 feet?
5 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, 5 feet. We'll address that in a second. So these goblins are 15 feet away.
Yes.
They aren't going to hear a band of party adventurers falling into a pit trap?
I mean, I think they would.
Yeah, of course they would. So you need to think of this as a 130 XP encounter. And is that really what you want to start your game off with?
No.
Yeah, no.
No. I was thinking more like the 80 XP encounter to start the game off.
Right. And in term, and also too, think about it this way. Let's say somebody does fall into this pit trap and then the goblins do come out. Well, that person that's falling in the pit trap, what are they doing that whole first combat of your first game ever? Running
left or right.
Running left or right where?
There's two paths on the bottom floor. They can go left or right.
You're talking about here? Yes. So now you're splitting the party. You're running.
Well, they don't have to split the party. Okay, the other guys could jump down.
Okay. Well, how far is the pit trap?
Floor 10 feet.
Okay. So
10, 12 feet.
All right. So then everybody's going to take a bunch of damage and then be on the bottom level of the dungeon and have no way out.
Well, I don't know. They could circumvent these goblin warriors, I'm sure.
I'm just saying, like, here's the thing. If you were playing with players who were, let's just say a little bit more seasoned or pro, like, I think this is be fine. But for your purposes, I think it is problematic.
Okay.
I think I would not use this pit trap, or I would use the pit trap, but not have it drop people below.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking like, could there be people below that would sabotage an oncoming group coming in? Like they could do something. It's not like a pit trap, but it could be like a grates or something. Because the idea I wanted to do was them to see below if they could, and know that there's a tunnel there without being able to get to it.
Mm.
You know, this is more about that Tower 2 thing. How do you?
I mean, yeah. I think broadcasting that there's a bottom level is really cool. But I'm just saying, like, you know, the realization is that these fights are, you know, these goblins are going to be encountering with this pit trap, and again, I mean, you could probably stretch the imagination, but I mean, that is only 15 feet, 20 feet, you know. More than likely, these encounters are going to sort of, you know, overlap.
Yeah. Or maybe these goblins like to stand back and wait for the party to come into a narrow tunnel. I don't know.
I'm just saying I don't like this design. Now,
yeah,
I'm not saying that it's, you know, bad. I'm just saying for your goals, I don't like this design. And I also think that either you're going to have a situation where the party is going to fall in the trap and then nothing is going to happen, or the party's going to fall into the trap and you're going to have goblins fighting them and the party's going to be split in half, or half of them are going to be, they're going to start the fight down, you know, 10 hit points or 6 hit points and prone, and they're going to be out of range of heals. They're going to be out of range of their party members, or someone's going to get to play their very first game of Pathfinder 2 and spend the first three rounds of the first fight making climb checks to try to get out of a pit trap. And you're going to be like, hey, I have to play Pathfinder 2. It's like, what'd you do? Climbed a rope.
Yeah, that doesn't sound exactly fun.
So I think that is my problem with that. Everything else, that your intent, I think, is on point.
Okay.
So
we'll work on that.
All right. So moving ahead. Okay.
Yes.
Next problem I have. Okay.
All right.
Next problem I have. Okay. Right. You got a, oh my gosh. I wonder if there's
a way that you can't lock it.
That is exactly what I'm trying to see if I can do here. Lock. Boom. Got it.
Oh, boom.
There we go. Good. You're a smart man. All right. All right. Ready? Okay. We got a PC. We got a PC. Okay. Now it doesn't work. That's great. All right. There we go. Okay. We got a PC and we've got a PC and we got a PC.
Yep.
And we got a PC.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And then we have
4 goblins.
A goblin and a goblin and a goblin. And I guess a goblin. That is that's a lot of people in a very small room.
I would disagree, Derek. I think this is 2 times the size that a normal Paizo map would look like.
I agree that it is 2 times the size of a normal Paizo map. Look, this is an area where I just feel very differently. Pathfinder has given us this incredible tool, okay, which is this incredible gift, which is this idea that few creatures actually have attack of opportunity. And that means that you have the ability to move, right? And to be dynamic in a fight. That speed matters, right? Because you can move and you can set up flanks, or you can try to get away from certain enemies. And then one of the things that they do is jam pack us into these tight rooms. The problem is, you know this, Bob, this is a 25 foot by 25 foot room. That's a big room.
Yep.
Right. But remember your Lord of the Rings. Okay. When they enter into Moria, you know, and they go into the thing and Gandalf raises up his light, it's not a 20 foot by 20 foot room. It is a grand hall that echoes off into the darkness.
Everything should be 2 times the size that I have.
I am a big believer that the smallest room you should really ever consider using is probably something like 30 feet by 30 feet.
You're talking about for a combat.
If you think a combat is going to occur there.
Got it.
And even then, and that might be good for like a couple of PCs and maybe 1 or 2 monsters. And again, I understand this is where, you know, simulation, right, is sort of in a yin yang sort of, you know, equilibrium with the game.
Yep.
You cannot lose sight of the fact that we are playing a game, that people are going to be playing this. And this is a part about where you think about it. Pathfinder 2 gives us these great tools right? Like, for example, one of the downsides of a lot of spells, we ding spells on our all spells rated live stream because they have range 30 feet. You know, we say that's very short range, right? There's spells that Magic Missile, for example, has 120 feet. So one of the downsides of some spells in Pathfinder 2 is this short range. And that's why people take things like Reach Spell, right? Which will let you add 30 feet to it. But if all of your combats occur within 30 feet, like if I'm standing in this corner, everything in the entire room is within 30 feet of me. And so there's really not it doesn't really matter if I'm fast or if I'm slow. It doesn't really matter if I have reach spell or if I have a spell that, is longer range, because the entire fight occurs within this narrow kind of, space.
Yep.
So
I would agree with that.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that this would be the best solution, but if you just simply made all of these squares 10 feet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of thinking of it like in my head, like when I draw my map, realistically, just double it up for the game.
Yeah, I mean, a big 50-foot wide corridor, and then we'll get. This is actually today's topic, which is good, which is going to be the basics of combat and counter design.
Okay,
and so we'll talk about that. Okay, but fundamentally, I think this is good. You come in, you have a fight. We established that the goblins are a presence here. We might be able to learn more about them. Again, getting into certain. Now, that being said, remember, I erased it, but remember, the simulation, okay, and the game should be in equilibrium. Part of the reason we do this, one of the criticisms of 4th edition is that it was too much of a game and not enough of a simulation. Part of the fun of playing a role-playing game is that it sometimes can live in both things. And the reason why simulation can be important is because we know how things work in the real life, right? And so it can be useful, it can be fun to take assumptions that we have about how the world works and apply them to our game to better understand it. And what do I mean by that? Well, getting back to your, if this was only 5 feet, hell, even if this was 20 feet, you have an open corridor between your guards and the main hall. So if a fight breaks out here and these goblins don't attack or don't invade, why?
I do not know.
Yeah. So
I've done that a lot in actually my games where I feel like if the party's making a lot of noise, this isn't a quick come in and kill, then the next room hears you, or I roll for it. Right now, there's just a door, so maybe it's sounded the sound's a little dampened. I don't know. It's sort of being a game at that point.
It is being a game at that point. I mean, a door is a good step, but there are other ideas that you have. You also can think ahead, right? Which is, again, how do I give my players information idea? How do I let them know more about the dungeon? Maybe the goblin commander and the 4 goblins, maybe the goblin commander is having two of the goblins fight for sport. And so there's other goblins and they're, kind of cheering and screaming and yelling and scratching. And they're really excited about it. Right. And so they're preoccupied. They're making a lot, either. Right. Yeah. They're making a lot of noise. If they, there already is a fight going on in this room, but also if the party takes out these goblins and they listen at this door, they're going to hear the sounds of, goblins, seemingly goblins fighting and screaming and, shouting at one another. That's going to let them make a better informed decision about what or where they want to go next. All right.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's great.
But fundamentally, let's move on. So let's go back into our goblins. So we've got 4 goblins and a goblin commander. Yep. We're right off the bat to a 120 XP encounter, huh?
I like it, Bill. I like it big and bold. I ran this Northern Reaches game, and what I learned was that the 120 XP fights are very fun. If they're not really injured, which the party I was having wasn't, it was fun. It was dynamic. There was lots of stuff going on. There was different movement, and the 80 XP fights, especially if the enemy was almost all the same, was super boring. And they just, now again, Goblin Warriors probably OP, but they were just owning skeletons. Like it was like
Goblin Warriors are OP, yes.
Yeah, the skeletons that I had in the Northern Reaches game, they just blew through them. So I kept going in my head like, how do I make that not an issue? And I'm like, that was a moderate fight. at 80 XP, and they had no problems with it at all. Now again, these are experienced gamers.
They are experienced. So what you're talking about is, and we've talked about this on the podcasters and things like this, right? You could think of that in Pathfinder 2. And again, usually we try to make things pretty system agnostic here, but we are obviously talking about Pathfinder 2. In Pathfinder 2, a player has a certain amount of resources, that the only resource that really matters, right? Which is their hit points. And the truth of the matter is, if your hit points go to 0, you are no longer participating in the fight. That is a problem. But fundamentally, unless you run out of hit points, unless you run out several times and actually enter into dying, it doesn't really matter whether at the end of the fight you are at, this few of hit points, or at the end of the fight if you are at this few of hit points, right? It doesn't make much of a difference. In my experience, moderate fights are designed to sort of get you to here, right? They're designed to sort of like get you down to 20 or 30 or 40% of your hit points, but not actually. It's like The Price is Right, right? Get you close, but not go over. It'll feel like, wow, that was really close. But like if someone ends the fight down even 90% of their hit points, I mean, if you have treat wounds or lay on hands or any other focus spells, they're going to be at 100%.
Yep.
And for no loss. Yeah, exactly.
It was like my moderate encounters were so boring,
pointless. Yes.
I mean, the only reason I like it here is it establishes that there's goblins here.
That's fine.
You know. But when I was doing in my other game, I kept going like the 120 XP fight was the most fun.
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about this too, right? We generally feel like there is sort of a curve.
Oh, that curve goes up so dang fast, though.
And it goes like that, right? Like a moderate fight is very, very, this is almost like, I'll say this is like 0% chance of death.
Yep.
And a severe fight, is here. And, it might be like, maybe it's like, it's 10%. It's still very low. But by the time you get to an extreme, you're like here. Okay. And it's like 50%. All right.
Yeah.
Or more. So it does ramp up very, very quickly. So when you're at 80 XP and you start adding on XP, it's like, okay, you can add to about, 100 or 120, and you're still probably within a safe range. But once you hit above 120, 130, things can get out of control real quick.
I agree. And that's what I learned running Northern Reaches. And so that I kind of took that into my mind here going, I want them to have fun in this dungeon as well. They're coming, they're going to establish themselves that there's goblins. These aren't too bad. They kind of messed me up a little bit, land hands, whatever, real quick. We're going to the next room. We listen in, like you said here. Oh, this is not just goblins. They got a little bit bigger guy with them. Okay, we start out fast. Now they don't have to go that way. They could say, maybe we'll go the other way.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's talk about this, because we've already been going here for a little while.
I know.
These are the way things work. I mean,
I know.
All right, so you've got sort of a neutral area here now.
Yes.
Now I'm going to quiz you on this. Okay, I'm going to quiz you on this. This room.
This is where I fail.
This room violates one of my rules. Which rule is that?
I think it was something like being pointless.
Well, specifically.
I don't remember the name of the rule, but my thought was that there's no reason for that room.
Right.
Because
this room,
you could just have this hallway extend all the way down.
Right. So
correct.
On paper, this room is bad.
Yes.
But in practice, the way you've implemented it, it could be not just good, but very good. For what reason or why? How do you plan to use this room?
So my first thought, and so this is probably just good, not very good, because I don't really understand what you're going to go with here in a second.
Okay.
But my first thought was that this area is where the goblins want to start moving towards.
Okay.
The other area is sort of locked off. They can't really get into this treasure trade. They can get in the kitchen, but they're like, we need more room. We're sort of building our encampment here. But every time they start coming this way, the zombies are, bashing them back, keeping them back a little bit because they're guarding their towers or their sort of guard mindset. So my thought was to have some bodies on the ground.
Perfect. You got it.
Oh, okay. Go. Okay.
You got it. So what this room.
Yeah.
So what you are doing with this room is you're foreshadowing.
Yes. Okay, good.
Okay. You are giving the player information. Another example could be there's a door here, right?
Mhm.
Which maybe is open because
Yeah,
the
it's
zombie.
definitely not locked. Maybe it's cracked, beat up.
But maybe the goblins have even built a primitive barricade here because they don't want the zombies getting through.
That's a good idea.
Maybe these goblins are here just as much to protect that barricade as they are this front entrance, right? Because there have been these this is sort of like the no man's land between the goblin controlled area, right? This is Team Goblin over here.
Yeah.
Right. And then this is sort of Team Undead.
And another thing too is we were talking about earlier about making noise. If the commander thinks the goblins are just fighting back the undead a little bit too, it might give us a secondary reason why they don't come out.
Correct. And the undead obviously are probably more powerful, on paper than the goblins, but they're not intelligent, they're not organized, right? And so, they might just occasionally, wade in and throw attacks, and the goblins just shoot at them and pick them apart from across the barrier. And maybe that what has happened is the goblins have tried to move in, and each time they get pushed back, and so now you have this like stalemate.
Yep.
And what this room does is it helps you tell your story. It helps you tell your lore. It gives the players the indication. Maybe they didn't know that there was undead before here. Maybe they only heard about a goblin that had come in here, and the treasure of the dwarven king that awaits. And the players, your players sitting down, also to take advantage of the fact they're new players. Old school D&D players like me. It's zombies. Okay, cool, whatever. I've been there. Like for me, a zombie attack. Like I fought undead so many times that if a zombie attack occurred, like in real life, I might be just like, it's just they're not even ghouls. They're just zombies. That's like low. That's CR. That's like level -1, right? We're not worried about that.
I got 3 actions. They got 2. We should be fine.
We should be fine. So again, but for newer players, that can be really scary, right? That could be really terrifying. They're old school D&D. I'm not saying this is necessarily old school D&D, but part of the fun about a dungeons could be a little bit of that, a little bit of that horror element. You're going into a scary place in the ground where
this would be the first time that they might encounter the undead. They might have thought, like you said, going in, oh, there's goblins here. That's who took over the door or thing.
Exactly.
You go, oh, these dwarfs are undead. Right. Why are they undead? Which is what the question I want them to ask.
Exactly. And so you might see that there is, maybe, some slain goblin bodies, right? And then, you could play. This is also, again, we're building layers here, right? We talked about this before. We know that there's this mystical ley line, right? That we know that it existed. And when the fortress fell, the dwarven defenders that defended it, right, became these undead beings because of the power of that. There could be some dead goblins here. And the party doesn't think much of it, right? And they go in. And they think, heck, even if it was just me, Derek, playing your game, I might just think, oh, there's undead here, right? And we go and we have our fun. And I go, okay, you know what? That was a big fight. That was, maybe that was a little bit of a tough fight. Let's return home for the evening. And when I come back to this room, those goblins are now zombies.
I knew that's where you were going with this, and I was already thinking like, oh my God, this is so next level. And actually, don't be cooler.
They like start twitching.
I was thinking they're not there.
That would even be right. That is
like, what weren't there things here?
That's not horror, Bob. We talked about this the other day. That is terror.
Which is what I don't like usually.
Yeah, that's right. Because terror is the fear of what could have happened. Yep. Right. Horror would be the party starts coming in there and they're like, make it. Remember, there's still that barricade, right? And they start trying to, and all of a sudden the bodies start twitching.
Yep.
And something is bringing them to life. Horror would be, or terror would be, you come back and all the goblin bodies are gone. Where did they go?
Yep.
And you killed the goblins, so it couldn't have been them. Right.
Unless you didn't decapitate their heads.
Exactly. And then you also set something up because, let's say that the party sees these shambling bodies, come to life. And this is where you have to be willing to kill your babies. You have to be willing to take the plan that you had and throw it out the window. Because let's say that the party comes in, and we're getting way the hell off topic here, but this is the fun of D&D, right? I'm the college professor that you'll never make it all the way through the book for. So the party comes in, they've killed these goblins, right? They hear these things. They say, man, we're not going to go that way. They go this way. They see the dead bodies. They go, oh man, maybe there's something evil or thing. They go in, they fight these zombies. They fight these zombies. Okay. We're all, we're all on the same page there.
Mm-hmm.
They come back. Oh my gosh, these bodies are twitching. Okay. They're missing.
Yeah.
And they think, oh my God, maybe they put two and two together. Maybe they don't. Or maybe they do come to life and they kill them and they say, okay. And then they go, let's get the hell out of here. And they leave these bodies alone.
Mm-hmm.
When the party comes back the next time to go deal with the goblin commander and the goblins, maybe they're already dead.
I know.
Because these goblins came to life, right? And they're basically inside, right? They're inside the perimeter. And with the goblins not by the party's act, remember we said there are 3 people in this triangle. Yep. Right. There's the sort of the necromancer, the undead forces. There's the goblins. But the third is the PCs.
Yes.
If the PCs come back and then realize that by killing the goblins and not disposing of the corpses, but also by killing the goblins, they basically remove the defense of what was keeping these undead at bay. And they provided them with fresh ammo in the form of bodies. And there's something going on here, which is just animating corpses. And now they have allowed the undead to sweep through. And the party realizes that, wow, that we did that.
Yeah.
Right.
Actions have consequences. This dungeon is a living, breathing thing.
Exactly. The dungeon itself is it's not a static place. This isn't a book. This isn't a movie, right? What I do here matters. That is so empowering for players to experience, because they're going to realize for the first time ever that this game is different than any other game that they have played. I mean, there might be some good video games that get close but even then that is a simulation, right? It's the illusion of choice, because obviously someone had to think of it
pre-established.
It's already pre-established, but there's a lot of different ways that you could take it. Right. And all of it could be in relation to what the PCs did or didn't do. But I think regardless of it, don't let the PCs come in and do things and not have it make a change. Right. Yep. And this would also be great because a lot of times, you're going to put this work in advance and you might have this map built and you might have a bunch of things done and you go, I've got 3 to 4 sessions. I got 3 to 4 weeks, or heck, 2 months if I'm playing every other week of content here built up. Okay. Well, the party comes in, they do what we just did. And you're like, great, I've got 2 weeks until my next game. But now I am so much more aware of what the party's capable of, what they responded well to, what they didn't, because going in initially, you don't really know. Yeah. But now you've got it's almost like you're cheating, because you're like, oh, I've got all this information. I know exactly what's going on now. I've got great ideas of how this would change the layout. Maybe something else changed. Maybe the undead took over. Maybe the goblins fought back. I don't know. They summoned reinforcements. Maybe you come back and the commander and just a couple of goblins are holed up in the kitchen, and they're willing to strike an alliance with the party.
Oh man, that's some next level stuff.
Right. And you suddenly you go, hey, if you guys want to make a diplomacy check, these goblins will aid you. Right. So you can really, really take this idea and build it up. So ordinarily I wouldn't like this room, but I think you've turned this room into a grade A room. So this is a great room. All right. So we come here, we got a tower, we've got some zombies.
Yep.
And I also see here we have our first stairs down.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to kind of skip around here a little bit, but I see.
Yeah, we should be able to.
But I see that we have another set of stairs down over here.
In the back.
In the back over here.
Yep.
Right. And these are both stairs down. And that is great design, because it means I can go and fight goblins and then still find these stairs down, or I could go and fight undead and I'll still find the stairs down. And more importantly, they lead to different places in different locations of the dungeon. So not only does it kind of get me where, there's 2 different ways to get there, but they don't literally lead to the same place, right? So the party that goes this way is going to have a very different experience than the party that goes, this way. Yep. And that's great. So I really, really like that. All right. So now we have another fight against some zombies.
Yep. So this is your first sense that this is a trade route. You got some zombies in here that are sort of guarding the trade treasure again.
Yep.
This room could be another contested room, but I did not make it that way. In my mind, these were the guards that were supposed to guard the king. And so they were sort of locked in this room, protecting this door.
Okay. I got it. And you
serve your duty in death.
Right. Right. And like you said, you could even have it, maybe they're a little bit more ceremonial, right? Like they have a little bit more
the King's Guard.
yeah, they have a little bit more like ornamentation to their things. And then we have our key, right?
Yep.
Which we've talked about.
Yep.
Now, in your mind, is there a world in which maybe a rogue would have the ability to pick this?
It's a good question. I actually had this sort of come up in my NR game, my Northern Reaches game.
Yeah,
where
not everyone might know the abbreviations.
Northern Reaches. I had a door that I wanted to set it like such a high DC, like legendary, DC. And so this wasn't meant to be picked. It was meant to be find the key or discover the key, and then you can unlock this door. But that was the shortcut. There was a harder way in. Right. And they tried to pick this lock, and guy rolled a 20. I was like, I mean, I guess you click it once, but it takes more than one click. You know what I mean? And right. And so, but I'd put the DC at like 30, and these are level 1 characters. So I did that purposely because I did not want it to be an easy rogue pick.
Right.
I would think I would do that here. This is Dwarven Fortress. This is a hefty lock. I could set the DC higher.
Yeah.
My thought was that the idea is that you're supposed to get the 2 keys.
Right.
I guess if they rolled 20, right. I could mess around
so
with it.
The problem is there. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm also, because I mean, obviously, like DC should be high for a reason. But this isn't a legendary dungeon. You know what I mean? The treasure of the dwarves isn't like some, level 30, level 20 equipment, right? It's the treasure that the party is going to get from this dungeon is going to be, level 2, level 3, level 1 treasure. So don't be afraid to let the players have their victories.
Okay.
I'm not saying you should make it easy, but I'm also not saying that you should make it impossible,
Okay.
And, certainly, I mean, there's also ways that you can kind of really put the screws to them, right? Because part of the problem with pick lock is, assuming you have enough picks to pick, the rogue can just sit here and pick these locks.
Yep.
And when they crit fail, they'll break a pick. But as long as they have a bunch of picks, which are a silver piece apiece, they could theoretically keep rolling until they pick it. So one idea that you could have is that maybe the zombies here come back to life.
Oh, so they're always sort of antagonizing them?
Right. And maybe it takes them like 10 minutes, right, to come back to life.
Mm.
And so like the party comes in here, they kill the zombies, they go, hey, I'm just going to sit here and pick at these doors, or I'm going to break them open with a crowbar or whatever. And the party starts, going ham on it. And you say, okay, you start working on it or whatever, or maybe after 1 minute, so a really good rogue would be able to come in here and probably make the check in a couple of actions, which might only be 15, 20, 30 seconds. But a bad rogue is probably gonna have to sit there and theoretically just roll dice for a while. But after 1 minute, which is 10 rounds, suddenly the zombies stand back up.
Yeah.
Because they are charged with, the defense of the king. And they
have a little bit more magic.
And maybe the magic itself is tied to the door.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And the other thing too is, don't be afraid to let your players, if someone says, oh, what's reanimating them? And you go, oh, the power of the door seems to be, keeping them reanimated.
I've done that before.
And then someone says, okay, is there anything I could do to the door? Instead of saying no, you say yes. Right? Always look for a way to say yes to your players.
Mm-hmm.
The answer, now, they might not like the cost, right? Don't say yes. Say yes, and the cost is this. When someone asks you to do something, figure out what an appropriate cost would be, right? It might be that in order to, unlock this door, maybe they need, or to dispel the magic that keeps these zombies reanimating, they need at least one of the keys, or maybe there's something else in the dungeon that they need, right? Something random or information. But anyways,
I like that idea.
All right. So they get through, and, ostensibly the it's not really a red herring, right? Because the real boss is the necromancer. But you come here to the king's chamber.
Yeah, this is a beatable fight, but he is not just a regular brute. He's a little bit more special. He's got the crown. He's got a better weapon.
Yep.
And this is his chamber. So you, in your mind, hypothetically, have found the king. You went through the treasure that was in the room before, which is the trade room.
Yep.
And you beat the king. This is 120 XP fight. You should be able to beat this as a severe fight. This is not too ridiculous. This is just one zombie. You should be able to gang him up, flank him. But this sort of tells the story. There is the king is here or was here or something.
Sure.
But then there's a secret door.
So let me, and I see here that you have treasure and you have trap.
Yes.
So in your mind, this is a possibility. Okay. Party enters.
Yep.
They finally get the 2 keys.
Yep.
Okay. They go here, they get this key, and then they go down to the second level. They come over, they get this key. They come back, they open this up. They fight the king, the zombie brute special, the legendary treasure of the Dwarven King. And they don't find the secret door. And so they leave empty-handed.
No, the treasure, there's treasure in the room underneath.
There's treasure here.
Yeah. No.
That's what I'm saying.
South.
No. Yeah, no. But that's the treasure for the random room with 2 moderate zombies. I'm saying,
yeah, but it's still a trade room. That's where the treasure would be.
What I'm saying is, in your mind, the party could fight the king, beat the king, and get nothing.
I guess maybe,
right, because in theory they could come in here, kill these 2 zombies, take all the treasure
and leave.
So
absolutely.
So what is the reward for killing the king?
I guess maybe my first thought.
Don't just say XP.
No, my first thought was that he has a better weapon. +1 potency ruin or something.
That's totally acceptable. Okay. If you give them something, because here's the thing, people are never going to remember the coin, the gem. You know what I mean? But they are going to remember that time they got that awesome axe or that awesome weapon or whatever, and they got
he's the king. He should.
And
be
they got it, and they got it from the Dwarven King, right? Yep. The undead king. That is great. Now here's the thing. If you want to throw some bonus treasure on here behind a secret door that has a trap that leads to this discovery room, all that is great, right?
Yeah, that's just bonus.
That's bonus. But make sure that the players feel rewarded, for accomplishing. When the players work hard, reward them, because again, it's that cycle. You want them to know that when they do things, and they do hard things, and they do brave things, and they do adventurous things, that is how the game, your system, your dungeon, your world, this game is going to reward them. You want to reward activity, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to reward passivity. You want to reward people being active and exploring things.
Okay. No, I like that. I think that's great. I think, my whole idea was that there's this secret door that's just a bonus. It's this better to this. He had a real good loot that he was kind of keeping to the side.
Yeah.
And just sort of and he has his own escape route that he didn't get to or something.
So let's talk about this escape route.
Yes.
Talk to me about it.
That was my this is what the king would have. And this is simulation. This is what the king would have to escape in times of chaos. Now, why did he not escape? I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead.
He stayed behind bravely to defend or something. Well, that's
going down with his ship. But so that would be his escape route.
So that's like the story narrative reason for it. Let's talk about the game board, the kind of the game design reason. Talk to me about what this represents to you.
I think it's just a way to leave without having to go back through the dungeon.
Okay.
So it's I have another exit or another entrance.
Right. So let's talk about that. That is what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Because you're absolutely right. It's a way to leave. But let's talk about that as an entrance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is a scenario because this place it's interesting as an escape route.
Yeah.
But it's far more interesting from the player's perspective as an entrance.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if the party can find this entrance, right, then they don't need to get the keys.
Nope.
So is there a way for them to find this entrance?
Not at this moment.
All right. Because
maybe 3.0.
Okay. Because that is something that you could put, that is basically lore. Okay. That you could put somewhere in the dungeon.
But if they already entered in the dungeon, would they be looking for another entrance to the dungeon?
Well, they would if they, I'm just kind of spitballing here, right?
Okay.
Imagine if somewhere they found a dwarven ledger, or maybe they found dwarven architectural notes, or maybe there's a ghostly spirit of a dwarf. It's not hostile. He didn't turn into undead. It's just his spirit, and he's not a mad. And he laments to the players that he is so sad that they couldn't defend their king, right? And the great treasury of the dwarves, and he wishes that the king had taken, his safety and taken the secret escape route that they dug for him.
Yeah.
And the players go, secret escape route that he got dug for them. I wonder if that secret escape route still exists. And then maybe they go up into the hills and they look for it. And then, maybe you make a couple checks or whatever, and they find it because they gain some information from some, I don't know, dwarf spirit that lives in the kitchen or something, or somewhere, on a lower level that gives them this information. And then the players now have a way to sort of, they'll feel like they're exploiting the dungeon, they're cheating it. They're like, I'm running this thing backwards. I'm coming into the king room from behind. I skipped this crap. I didn't have to get the key. And more importantly, you're giving them,
that is true.
And more importantly, you're making it obvious to them. See, you didn't have to get the keys. There were other ways to get to the treasure. There were other ways to get to the king if you looked hard enough and you paid attention.
That's true.
Especially if it's something that doesn't beat them over the head with it. When you find a key, you go, okay, there's a door somewhere that they expect me to use this key. But if you just gain information, remember, it's like, we talked about this on the podcast where you paid attention to what Aaron was saying in our one game that we were playing together as Pathfinder 2, and you use that information to make a correct assumption about something that might be true. And so if this kind of passive lore leads your players to make better decisions, like, hey, let's go outside and let's go look around. Maybe this escape tunnel still exists. Then that is a good thing.
Well, and not to spoil anything, if they start looking for that, they might find the other entrance on the other side,
which is also fine. All right. So we have 2 stairs down, which lead to our basement level.
Yes.
And again, I apologize. The
grid's a little wonky.
The grid is a little wonky on the whiteboard. Maybe I can turn it off here. Doesn't look like I can. Okay. So,
next time I'll do it without the grid on mine.
Yeah, that's fine. All right.
Okay.
All right. So we come down here.
Yep.
And
I'll explain real quick. If you took the back entrance, you just went straight through goblin to goblin, right to the back entrance. You did nothing else.
Yep.
You'd come right down to this little tiny room, sort of in the back middle, and off there is a long tunnel and other areas like a workshop. My thought was that there is maybe some bookshelves or boxes that are sort of blocking this blasted in area, but it's not hidden. It's not undiscoverable. This happened and then things went off the chains,
right.
But that there's maybe some kind of haunt or maybe some kind of ghostly presence or story that's going to happen here.
Well, it's also a great way to, take advantage of some of the Pathfinder 2 options if you were using that system, but, to not make everything just a combat encounter, right?
Correct.
So this is a great way for other characters to be able to use skills and all that other stuff. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this in my mind is what happened. This is sort of the discovery that's right next to it. This is how it fell, because the idea is this thing is supposed to be sort of impenetrable.
Right.
So how did it even fall the first time? Well, someone came in this back entrance, dug a tunnel or blew it up or something, or whatever. Or maybe this is how they got in and they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
Boom. That's how they got in. So there's a discovery there, which I love rewarding discovery. I think discovery is one of the best things you can reward. I feel so empowered when someone says, like, you discovered this secret lore, secret thing that happened in this story.
And here's 100 XP to boot, right?
I put some XP in there for the discovery.
That's great.
So if there's a haunt up above, there's just another small combat to
also to remember that what gets measured gets managed.
Yes.
And so if you are rewarding your players for exploring and paying attention and being active and engaged players, then they are going to get the message. Okay, I need to be an active player. I need to be engaged. Right.
My thought was if they could discover what happened here.
Yeah.
I want to reward them for that.
Yes, exactly. That's great.
So again, just a super long tunnel then goes to this little prison, which my thought was, again, this pit trap might get people, or this is where they would carry them down to this prison. So there's a couple of zombies in there.
So let's talk about something here that I do want to talk about, which is, do you worry, and I do, that you're overusing zombies? We got more zombies. We got more zombies. We got more zombies. We had zombies on the top roof. I thought we wanted to maybe include some skeletons.
We could do skeletons
or other undead. Because
I went with zombies for simplicity purposes of just combat.
Right.
But yes, any type of undead, especially I thought in the prison area could be like if there was an elf skeleton or something, a different ancestry that was there.
Well, remember, one of the things I always talk about is like sort of this rule of 3. Okay. And I've talked about this before on other shows and other podcasts, but I like the idea, especially with newer players or, this is even true for more experienced players. And one of my biggest gripes about a lot of Pathfinder APs or about a lot of the ways that people run their games is they don't let the players encounter the same monster numerous times. And one of the reasons for this is, like, let's say the first time you're fighting a monster, you've never fought this monster before. Okay. Let's say that it's, I don't know, a gray ooze. Okay. You've never fought a gray ooze before.
I have never fought a gray ooze before.
You've never fought a gray ooze before. Okay. But even in Pathfinder terms, like if you're fighting a zombie, okay, we maybe you understand what a zombie is, realistically. But you don't know what it does in the game. Okay. And there could be for anything. It could be for a devil. It could be for a griffin. It could be for anything. But the first time that you fight this monster, you are at a disadvantage, right? Even though the math of the game says this creature is, or this encounter is 80 XP, right? I'll give you a great example. In our Pathfinder 2 party, we have a lot of Necklace of Fireballs. And let's say that we encountered a fight and suddenly there was a big bad iron golem. And we went, okay, it's the first time fighting an iron golem. And we go, let's follow standard operating procedures. There's two of them. There's standard operating procedures. Let's lob these, necklace. Everybody pulls out their Necklace of Fireballs and prepares to lob them. That's our whole plan. And we lob them. And then we discover not only are they immune to magic, but fire actually heals them and invigorates them.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So on paper, that's a 120 XP fight, but not really. Because, imagine if the first thing that we had done was something completely different because we knew what to expect. In fact, you could argue we made the worst choice, right? That fight is going to be tougher because we don't know enough about them.
Correct.
And secondly, if you don't know enough about them, the game expects that you're probably going to be making some recall knowledge checks. Well, that's eating up your actions, right? Those are actions that you could spend moving, attacking, doing buffs or whatever. But you're spending those first couple of rounds. What the hell is this thing? What are its saves? Is it resistant? Is it weak to things? We don't know. And in the meantime, you're kind of struggling.
Yeah.
So when you fight it that first time, it's kind of harder on paper, harder in reality than it is on paper. And you, I hate to say it, but it's like you kind of get kicked around. You kind of get beat up and you kind of feel like that was tough, but I learned. And now the next time we fight them, I'll know better.
Yep.
And then in a lot of games, you never fight it again. Right.
You were saying rule of three, meaning that we could fight the Goblin Warriors 3 times, the zombies 3 times. They feel like they've established a connection.
So the second time the party gets to fight them, they know better. Maybe they don't know everything. They might, especially as you get higher level and monsters get more bags of tricks. Okay. This is also a note for you game masters. This is a great way to get more mileage out of monsters that have all those cool abilities, right? You're really excited to use a skeletal monstrosity. You play it for the whole time. It never even got to fling its ribs at people because it was in melee the whole time. Well, maybe run it again. And this time it gets to fling ribs. So the players realize, okay, there's still a little bit of tricksiness to this.
Yep.
But the second time they fight it, okay, the second time they fight zombies, they go in there and they go, okay, we get it. These guys are slow. They can only get 2 actions. We get 3. If we can just keep our distance, right, we'll have a much better time of it. And so the party feels like we've figured out, but maybe they don't know that the zombies have the grab and they learn that in this fight. So at this point, the party, they get it. After the second fight, right, the first fight, they were like, oh my God, this was tough. Right. The second time they're like, okay, we figured this out. Why do we have the third time? The third time is so that they can demonstrate mastery. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The third time, again, on paper, it might be a 120 XP zombie fight. Okay. A 120 XP zombie fight. But in reality, it plays out more like a 100 or even an 80 XP fight because the party knows exactly what to do. They've got their zombie protocol locked in. Okay. You do this. We know everything these creatures could do. We know what their bad saves are. We know how to attack them. We can just get them. And that point, great. The fourth time is overkill because now the party will become bored.
Yeah,
right?
I can see that now.
So you go, because at this point you go, hey, I've learned how to play it. I've beaten the game. I've figured it out. I've solved the puzzle of this creature.
Mm-hmm.
You've given me an opportunity to solve that puzzle of that creature. Now I'm bored with it.
Yep.
Because now it's like more, now I'm just rinse repeat.
Yep.
Because we've done it. Right. And so That is now what you can do is, maybe they were fighting 1 or 2 or 3 zombies. All right. The rule of 3 can also apply macroscopically. Maybe 5 levels from now, or 4 levels from now, you have an encounter which is like with 10 zombies, right? Or big zombies. And the party goes, okay, this is almost like we remember our zombie tactics, but now it's like more level appropriate, and it's a bigger fight, but we're still able to rely on that cool zombie lore that we had learned early on and sort of feel like we're being rewarded for playing the game and establishing mastery. But I do worry that if you use the same type of monster too often, the party will get bored. And if you use different types of monsters too much, the party will never get that sensation of like mastery.
So it's definitely a balance.
Right. You want the party to start off kind of flat-footed, right? Kind of on their toes. I don't know what to expect, but you don't want to keep them like that forever. Right? You want them to eventually feel like, okay, yeah, we are in kick-ass mode, right? We are able to deal with this creature and we know what's up. So I do think that there's a little bit too many zombies here.
Yeah. So we could definitely, or I could definitely start replacing that with something different, more unique, especially now we're on the second level.
Right.
Definitely start to change it up a little bit.
So lastly, we get to the Necromancer here, and he's in this big cave.
Yeah.
I see that you put him as a 160 XP fight.
Oh, yeah.
That's extreme.
That's extreme, baby.
You want to explain that one to me?
Well, I love extreme fights too.
Okay.
I think this is the boss. This is what you came here for. Maybe not you didn't come here for, but this is the big baddie of the area. This is what has sort of been festering off this ley line that you're going to discover. This is an extreme fight. This is not supposed to be easy, though it is only one creature, which I tend to be able to handle sometimes with a good group. But, I thought maybe if there might be some environmental hazards before this fight. Now, the thing that you have to know is,
well, by the way, before this fight, you have a 120 XP fight.
Yeah.
That's 170 XP. Plus this.
Well, I don't know how it's going to work the environmental hazard yet.
Okay.
But I wanted this area to feel something different.
Be aware.
No, I know. Well, I throw 180 XP fight at people, so I know devastation.
So let me do this.
Let me tell you one thing before you go.
Yeah, no, please. We're already at
I know.
We're already like 1 hour 10 minutes. So we're going deep on this one.
This dungeon.
Yeah.
If you did fight everything up until this point, you would be at level 2.
Okay. That's pretty good. So that's, by the way, so if you're level 1 and this is a single monster, that would mean that creature would be a level 4.
Correct.
Which means if you did get to level 2, this creature would only be 120 XP and would just be a severe.
And now you're rewarded for grinding a little bit.
It's okay. It's okay to reward for grinding.
If not, it's an extreme fight, which is, I think, still pretty cool to encounter those every once in a while. So keep you in check.
Yeah. So another idea that I was going to throw at you, in terms of this is, again, remember, if the party wants to, they could brute force, right? Grind levels, or be level 1 and be really good, and I don't know, beat the extreme and fight. But
that's cool.
Another option that you could do is allow things the players do to affect the levels of monsters. Okay. So for example, let's say we had another room in this dungeon. Maybe it's over here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's back on our first level, but off of this tower. Maybe it's over here in this supply.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this isn't a supply.
Correct.
Maybe this is a shrine. Right?
Interesting.
A shrine to the dwarven gods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been corrupted by the undead. So the party comes in, they kill the undead, and maybe they bless the shrine. And the dwarven spirits decide, okay, we recognize that you're here to do this. And maybe that they give those some lore to the party. There is a great evil that sleeps below, if you haven't already guessed. Again, pointing clues towards what you really, ultimately, you kind of do want them to figure this out, right? They don't have to. They don't have to, but it would be cool. And they tell you, they're like, this evil being is why we cannot find our eternal rest. But the spirits of the dwarves will be with you. And maybe if they do that and they go to fight this guy, as the fight begins, dwarven ghostly spirits appear and begin like distracting him and ripping and pulling at him. And then you slap the weak template on him.
Nice.
Right. Giving him a -2 to attack, a -2 to his AC.
Yeah.
Right. And like -5 or 10 hit points. And
that would roughly dropping him a level,
which would mean that if they were level 1, he would suddenly be a 120.
Yep.
Now you'd award them the full XP.
Yep.
You wouldn't
They played
actually make him
smart.
weak. But it also means if they did it all, if they were level 2 and they made him weak, then it would suddenly be a moderate fight. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
might say, well, that's not very climatic. That's not very epic. But it is, because they did that.
Yep.
Right? The epic part was what they did, and that what they did mattered. You didn't artificially make it so that this will always be this super tough epic fight. It could have been, but you guys were cool.
And like you
were
said,
smart.
you said also like earlier, what if another group comes in here and adventures? Like I run this for a different group, and they go, "Oh, you guys blessed the shrine? We just ignored that thing."
That's right.
And so that necromancer was a bitch.
Right.
Like,
well,
he was
right.
a beast.
Yeah. Like everyone's like, "Oh, the necromancer was so tough. We lost 2 people." And you go, 2 people, man.
Didn't you bless that shrine? It was so easy.
Yeah, we made it so easy. And the players go, "Wow, I feel smart. I feel rewarded for the actions that I took in the game." And again, I'm just, thinking outside the box here.
No, I kind of like
but
it.
But anything that you can do to make the players feel rewarded, whether it's with XP or with treasure, okay, or with, things like what we just described here, sort of with these sort of events that sort of change or modify or otherwise increase their ability. So, I think I think you did a great job here. I think this dungeon has a lot going for it. I think it's very interesting. I think it has a lot. Again, the key things I would change. I would, vary up the zombies a little bit. I would think more about the pit trap and how that interacts and how that works. But other than that, I'm going to give this a solid B+.
Woo!
I think this is very, very good. And I think, I think this would be a fun little, maybe 2-session, possibly 3-session dungeon to run through. And I think you could have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I think this is a great job, Bob. B+.
Yes, you guys heard it here first.
B+. All right. So that was our recap.
That was our quick 30-minute recap.
Oh yeah, we're going super deep on this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna call that night school for this week. And next time that we get together, what we're gonna do is we're gonna dive into some of these combat encounters. Right? Bob has figured out the XP. He's figured out the monsters he's gonna put into them, but these are boring. Okay, we're gonna figure out how do we make these combat encounters sing and glow. Okay, Pathfinder
like that.
Pathfinder 2 gives you some tools, but there are some other systems that have done the job a little bit better. And we can learn from some of those previous editions of other games to sort of really understand what makes a combat encounter fun, right? Because part of the reason that we play Dungeons and Dragons, part of the reason we play Pathfinder 2, especially Pathfinder 2, is we do enjoy a good fight. And we enjoy some of the challenges of mechanically dealing with that fight. And there's a little bit of, tactical miniature play that comes with that game. And combat is kind of like a little mini game, a little board game within the game. And I think there are ways that you can make that a lot more exciting and a lot more fun. If you're going to go through the rigmarole of, engaging with Pathfinder 2 and choosing all of these feats and options, then it behooves you as a GM to try to get the most out of those options and really challenge your players and make the encounters things that people are going to remember. And I think there's a lot of tools in the game to deal with that. So Bob, again, for you at home, hopefully, you learned a lot here as we sort of broke this down. I know we didn't get to an official new lesson today, but I know there were a lot of nuggets of wisdom that kind of got dropped there. And
the bell rang and we didn't get to assign any new class
homework. Saved by the bell is what it is. So no new homework. You're off the hook. And we'll get another night school out here where we're going to keep continuing and pressing on. So if you're interested in having these conversations with us, giving us your feedback, maybe pitching us some of your ideas, feel free to check out our Patreon. We have a link below, and that's going to get you access to a bunch of stuff, including some bonus content that's going to be coming after this video, as well as our Discord, where you have the ability to talk with over 150 other players and GMs who are, let's just say they think like us, So I want to say thanks to everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bob, we lost your camera.
Okay. I don't even know why I did that.
All right. I don't know why I did that either. We'll start that again. So I want to say thanks to Bob for being such a great student, such a patient student. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call.